Hello everyone, I hope that you are doing fine and enjoying very pleasant, beautiful, warm summer days. I am here with another psychological topic. I would like to talk a bit about some people's excessive needs for relational processing in relationship, how we can understand it. Have you ever heard about some people who need to talk and explain everything, especially when it comes to small daily life unimportant conflicts or happenings? I understand this behavior as a compensation strategy or a trauma response, as a substantial need for relational processing, in the sense that the person is in need of talking about every single situation, every single feeling or happening, regardless of it being important or relevant enough, big or small. And the people around them, like their partners, may find it difficult or emotionally and mentally demanding to constantly being responsive to their partner's excessive needs of talking and processing every single detail of information and situations. So therefore, in the context of relationships, relational processing is about the ways we perceive, respond to, and take action on experienced emotions within interpersonal space. So it is actually also related to our capacity to manage our own feelings and the way we tend to handle the exchange of emotional information in our interpersonal communication space. But there should be a balance. The fact is that many of us who were exposed to emotional neglect and abuse or abandonment may become very vulnerable and sensitive to unpleasant moments and conflicts. And in case our subjective experience was that our authentic feelings were repeatedly neglected, or that we were not allowed to talk and express our feelings or stand up for ourselves, then now in adulthood, we may unconsciously need to, overprocess everything that happens around us or in our relationship, or that everything which has, potentially a slight sign or content of conflict or even, mismatch with our expectations can trigger an unpleasant feeling and need for processing it, as if without doing this, we will not be fair, or we have not done it in the right way, or that it might mean that we have been reluctant or indifferent to conflicts and did not use that opportunity to express ourselves, although we have had the freedom to do this. That is why I refer to it as a compensation strategy. This is not necessarily the same as urge to over-explaining things, which itself is a form of trauma response, because in this case you might have need to process small things and happenings which may be considered as unimportant for other people, for example for your partner. So because not making an attempt to processing this information may trigger fear and uncertainty, and eventually will lead to re-experiencing the original feelings due to our old emotional traumas and patterns. That's why it becomes very important unconsciously for the person to do that processing. This is sometimes understood and seen as a good, and positive characteristic, as being verbally active and participating and talkative in relationships is socially maybe accepted and even generally, encouraged by experts and educators, because we have to do some things with resentment, for example, and interpersonal, conflicts. That is true. But the reaction which I refer to is about something else and contains an inner urge to not missing the opportunity to, catch the potential of getting free and reaching justice by each and every unpleasant feelings and situation which are not always even related to us. So this can generate frustration and overwhelming feelings for their partners, because their partners find themselves unable to participate in such high level of processing activity all the time, right? I believe that is why many people may feel themselves, rejected when their partners express frustration or tend to appear, uninterested in engaging in their emotional processing experience, while their experience will be a reflection of their past traumas like neglect and rejection. Their partner's experiences will become emotional exhaustion and perhaps confusion, because most of them are really interested in being supportive and emotionally present for their partners, and they want really to engage, but over time they may find it challenging, their partners, and energy draining to fulfill this role all the time. And interestingly, many of such dynamics get disguised and concealed and usually understood as a malfunctional dynamics in relationship due to partner's absence or absence of genuine interest and honest will for engaging and supporting their partner's emotional experiences. And this will unfortunately lead the whole therapy process into a different and somewhat wrong direction, because I assume that the main focus should be on the other person's response, which is trauma related. I remember that I was working with a couple who struggled with communication, and the wife sought psychological help for their marriage related problems. After a few assessment sessions with my colleague, she was referred to me for further treatment. I understood her problem as an extreme need for receiving emotional support and confirmation and verbal and emotional engagement over her partner, when she just had a need to talk about and resolve a problem. She was annoyed at her partner and very disappointed in him, and she also mentioned that he had just changed his behaviors and seemed no longer to be willing to support her emotionally when she brings up things with him. At the first session, it sounded to me like a very understandable and valid need which she was presenting at that time, but a closer look at the nuclear of the problem she was referring to gave some clue to me about her own sufferings and related needs, which manifest in communication with her husband. And when I talked with her husband, he admitted that he's just fed up and annoyed of her bothering, emotional demands on very tiny situations which to him are just, peripheral and insignificant. For example, she found it very disappointing when he refused to go deep and together with her reflect on how she perceived her manager's attitude toward her colleague, who he barely knew. And she did not know her well either, but she was afraid that she will face a similar situation in the future, or that in another example, that she felt that she had to talk a lot about her thoughts and feelings of uncertainty and fear, and a few memories that popped up after her short visit at a neighbor's place. And she felt that there was something off there, and despite it was not about her directly, she felt that she had to share it and work through it and find out why it was like this and so on. And her husband could see no point to process everything that happens in their surroundings, in their daily life. It was overwhelming for him. I could not find his responses, his reactions as toxic and maladaptive or abusive despite her expectation. Then my therapy focus was helping her to sharpen her discernment ability in order to distinguish between situations of significance which require processing and those which are representations of an anxious response pattern related to past traumas. So here it is more important to develop discernment and distinguishing skills than focusing on encouraging the other persons to become more observant and emotionally responsive in change process, right? So not every sort of processing is about being present and cautious and responsive to relationship dynamics. Sometimes we should only let the moment emerge and pass by without, reacting or, trying to resolve it. And this is about establishing and finding a balance through relationship dynamics, and also to recognize the vulnerability within a situation which calls for processing, and also let the other conflict-like moments to come by and disappear, not to engage too much. And this ability will be developed when we get free from our previous trauma bonds, unmet needs, and following coping strategies which are maladaptive. I think that one of the prevailing effects of traumatic experiences is making our distinction abilities dull and inefficient. And this makes sense because, especially when it comes to relational traumas, our boundaries and red lines were usually invaded, and therefore there will be vague and ambiguous cross lines between emotional needs and themes, and everything that has potential and emotional load influenced by tension and pressure and proximate unpleasant feeling will trigger a need to do something with or acting out without having clarity about it being a befitting or appropriate thing to going ahead processing it or not. Well, there are a lot to say on how previous traumatic experiences and unpleasant experiences may shape our brains and our strategies, our behaviors. I hope that these reflections have been interesting for you. Please let me know if you would like me to talk about a topic which is interesting for you, and let us know about your thoughts about this and other videos. Thank you for joining. Take care. Bye.